It's good. Okay. There we go. Well, Eli, how are you doing this afternoon?
I'm doing great, Will. How are you?
Doing well. Thanks so much for taking the time to come on the show again. We got one of our first repeat guests. This is exciting. Eli, do you mind giving just a brief bio for folks who might have not heard the last episode and kind of some of the big ideas you're interested in right now?
Sure. So I'm a senior research fellow at the Center for Growth and Opportunity at Utah State University, and I'm an economist by training. And basically what I work on and think about and try to do in the real world is end the great stagnation, right? So try to increase total factor productivity growth back to at least 2% a year where it belongs, rather than the much lower rate of growth that we've been having since the early 1970s, but especially since about 2005. So I think about like a bunch of industries, energy, transportation, aerospace particularly, I love, health, housing, kind of the big sectors of the economy that have not really grown as fast as they should have over that period.
I love it. Eli, if you had to rate how we've been doing the 2020s, we're about 20% of the way through so far. Do you think we are on the right trajectory to escape the Great Stagnation, or how do things look for you?
I'm. It's a little skewed by COVID, obviously. We don't know what would happen. Operation Warp Speed was like a non-complacent event, right? So that's great. But overall, I don't see any signs of kind of waking up out of our slumber and taking seriously the need to grow in these big industrial sectors.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's tough, man. And even people that are friendly to the cause, I hate to, we've had a lot of, Caliembe's had a lot of success recently, which I've been really excited about. That makes me bullish. But then, it's time to build. Mark Andreessen still, privately will prevent building in Atherton. So it's, it's tough, man. It's tough out there for folks trying to fix things. I'm curious. One of the biggest hype points recently has been LLMs, ChatGPT. Really has kind of caught the imagination of everyone. I found it quite useful in my day to day. In fact, I used it to help write a couple of conference submissions. I thought would take a full day of writing. Ended up finishing them in about 15 minutes thanks to ChatGPT. So there's been some productivity increases, but then again, it may not be the end all be all for knowledge workers and improving productivity. What do you think, when we look back 5 years from now, what will we think about the LLM kind of hype train right now? Will it have solved some of these productivity growth problems, or will we be kind of disappointed about the effects?
That's a great question. So I think over the next 5 years, these models are just going to get better and better.
Yeah.
Right? And they are going to play a role in our lives, and especially I think they will affect pretty significantly the content industry, the media industry, the advertising industry, things like that. The media industry is only 2% of GDP, but it punches way above its weight in terms of cultural salience.
I see.
Right? And so for people like you and me, we spend a big chunk of our day in front of a screen,
right? And
we're consuming media, and so it's going to feel oh wow, it's this massive change. But if you look at how it's affecting these sort of large industrial sectors that are in the world of atoms and not the world of bits, I think the impact, I think it probably will be minimal. I think it's conceivable that it wouldn't be minimal, but it would rely on us sort of not sabotaging it, like we've sabotaged everything else in these sectors for the last 50 years.
So actually, I want to take this in an interesting direction. This might be a little unexpected, but I would love your take on this. One of my big worries about the alignment community and everyone focused on that is I feel like LLMs are one of these few areas of innovation in our economy right now, and this whole kind of Luddite sentiment that we need to stop, we need to stop. Clearly, this is the end of the world. This kind of Revelation-esque, New Testament pre-millenarian Protestantism or something weird like the apocalypse is coming. We need to stop it. And it is. I'm much more worried about the stagnation apocalypse that is upon us immediately than this somewhat more imaginary alignment problem, which I believe is still a problem. Someone should be thinking about it, but I don't think we should stop the brakes on our progress because of it.
I agree with you, and to yes and you, I would also add the issue of just even. I think the idea of like moderating the output of these LLMs is kind of crazy because it's going to turn the LLMs into a culture war object.
Oh yes, great point. Great point.
You know, like the idea that we have to make sure that the LLMs never say anything taboo or offensive.
Yes. In
the same way that we kind of make sure that like we limit the offensiveness of what you can say on Twitter or Facebook, right? Like there's like you can obviously say some offensive things, but that battle over where the line is and who should be in charge and how we police this, it's coming. It's going to come for the LLM. So it's just going to be this very unpleasant. Culture war extension over LLMs, and so I do think like we should be thinking about like how can we make credibly neutral LLMs?
Oh, nice,
right? Like what is there an approach to that, right? And I think like open source models and the tools that we might be able to build that allow like federated training or that that sort of can do fundraising for an open source model that would be like more credibly neutral and that you could run on your own device instead of running it in the cloud, right? That those kinds of innovations, I think, are going to be important if we want to avoid, like a very unpleasant few years.
Yes. This is a great point. The political football of what ChatGPT thinks about Joe Biden or DeSantis or something like, and it doesn't align with,
right? Yeah, like who cares?
Right. It's quite a bizarre thing to be worried about, but it does seem like a lot of people have this top of mind at the end of the day. Very interesting. Do you think, LLMs will make knowledge workers a lot more productive, perhaps like consultants, like you can just build the deck immediately. You don't have to spend hours grinding on it. For you, like, will it make, producing content or like, analysis easier? Or do you think it just is kind of like more of a parlor trick than we want to believe right now?
I have, I've like tried to use it a few times and it hasn't really, it's not like self-evidently put anything, change my process in any way. It's not, for me, it's not been compelling. I think, now it kind of depends on what kind of content you're producing, right? Like if I'm writing like a blog post on my personal blog, like I aspire to like the highest levels of like surprise and newness, originality, right? In those posts, I'm not writing to like check a box or to like submit a form or or like and I think if you are I think there's a lot of process in the world, right, where it's just like we need you to write this many sentences about this, so that on your application, so that we can move forward. And like it, I think it might be able to help some with that. But then, I mean, the real question is like that process is really stupid, right? Like if we're kind of if it's kind of like reducible to like a lesser number of bits, like we should just be like sort of asking for those bits rather than using AI as like a compression and expansion tool to like mediate between the thing that, the two humans who really just need to exchange a smaller number of bits.
Right.
So I don't know. And then I think about like, business processes. Like we saw Microsoft announce like Microsoft Teams Premium, right? Which has like some tools that look like meeting summaries and like you can figure out what the action items were from the meeting like really quickly and stuff like that. That seems like not obviously bad, or like maybe potentially useful.
Yeah.
But like my question, like in terms of productivity, it's like what I want to know is like, when do we start replacing people in the process? Like, when do we lay people off because they're like, oh, we don't need you anymore because we have an AI model to do your job? And I don't know when that's coming in the business world, right? Like with word processors, like we got rid of a bunch of secretaries.
Yeah.
Typing pool people, right? And yeah, I'd be curious to know like when are those layoffs coming? Because until the layoffs happen, like we're not really getting more productive.
Gotcha.
I think it's a I wouldn't say it's an illusion either, but it's just like we're getting more information that is possibly not really that high value.
Gotcha. So this is really worrisome to me, because it seems like this is one of the big areas of hype, or like when you point someone to like, oh, like we're getting look, progress is increasing so fast and all these things, and they point to the LLMs, and then it's like, well, if there's really not a ton there at the end of the day, it's like maybe we're more cooked than even the bears would like to believe.
Yeah, that's kind of my concern with it as well, that that sort of like people can say like, oh, don't worry, like economic growth is coming, we can like sort of sit back and wait for it to happen as Moore's law progresses, and as people are training these models and stuff, and we're gonna have like post-capitalist like luxury everything, because we're just going to have the AI models produce everything. I don't think that's the world we're in. So I think we got to work pretty hard and figure out how to unlock these more physical sectors of the economy, and take the most advantage of the AI tools, because I think like AI tools could have huge benefits in, say, medicine, right? If they're applied properly, but probably it's going to be illegal for some period of time to like apply them the way we should. So we got to fix that.
Right. I just want to highlight for the audience how and I agree, Eli, with your perspective. I like a lot, but just how different it is when I visit Berkeley, and I'm talking to everyone, and they're literally like, these things are so powerful, they're going to kill all of us in 10 years, and I'm not saying for retirement. I mean, this is like what someone told me at a house party, right? A very smart, well-known, rationalist blogger, right? These things are like diametrically opposed, right? Which is very interesting. But I do think it is the case. I think you're right on this. That they really are. It's just it's not quite there. There's something people are missing. What do you think? Why do really smart people have such differing views on this? Do you have any? That's like a meta question that's very difficult. Maybe not. You're not able to answer it, and that's fine. But do you have any sense of why that is?
I don't know. Thinking about my own experience, right? Like, I'm a little bit older than some of these the most enthusiastic AI proponents, and I've been burned before, right? Like I think that's part of it. Is that I was I kind of was around for like the rise of the web, right? I got on the web as a teenager and tinkered, and I was like, this is going to change the world, and I was like super excited about it in the late 90s, early 2000s, continued to follow it and stuff. And I was like, yeah, this is going to change the world. And it did change the world, but just, it didn't change the economy.
Right.
It didn't deliver massive amounts of growth. And I think there's not a lot of people who, if they're kind of like, they're both like tech aware and sort of economics-y in terms of their way of thinking, and have been around to get burned the first time, right? And so I think
more clearly.
So that's I think that is part of my perspective is that I kind of, I think, got it wrong right before that. I thought digital technology was going to do more for us than it did.
Right.
And now we're just, it feels very much like, okay, this is just an extension of that.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. Going back to what we can actually do to kind of juice growth, we talked, it was probably a year and a half ago, about NEPA. Have there been, I know at the time the Trump administration was working on a couple of different things and trying to get things moving again. Has there been any positive movement on kind of fixing kind of these broken, permitting and environmental review processes in the U.S.?
Legally, I don't think there's been, not much has moved the needle, right? Like, so Trump did get some reforms through on, changing the NEPA implementing regulations. Some of those were, a small number of those were immediately rolled back by the Biden White House when they got in. Some of them have stood for now. Some of the guidance that Trump rolled back also, the Biden administration is now in the process of reinstating. So legally, some of the Trump changes have stood and some have, I think the Biden administration is still going to take another crack at figuring out what a more comprehensive reform could look like. And I think, according to their last rulemaking on this, they were going to do more in the future.
Gotcha.
So we'll see, but it's been pretty marginal, but I think that there has been something really positive that's happened over the last year and a half.
Yeah,
which is more and more people have become aware of the problem and have agreed that it's a problem.
That's
right.
Important.
So I think in particular the climate community, right? People who really want to build a lot of clean energy.
Yeah.
Projects over the next 10 years. I think they're starting to realize, okay, tactically, if we want to build this much clean energy, we're going to have to do a lot of environmental reviews. And, conservative opponents of this can use NEPA to object to it, right? So you see, you're seeing, offshore wind projects getting
NEPA
getting challenged, right?
Yeah,
by people who are ostensibly are concerned about some crabs or something like that, right? And that is holding things back. I think one thing that I think is still not in public consciousness, but there's a case where people are challenging some immigration reforms on the basis of NEPA, right? So I think it's the Biden administration's decision to stop building the border wall has been challenged on NEPA grounds.
Oh, really?
Yes. So, and that case is live and it's ongoing in the DC District Court. So, I think that as that awareness grows, so there was, a lot of talk with in the last Congress about some kind of permitting reform for energy. And this was pushed by Joe Manchin, and it's part of his deal for supporting the Inflation Reduction Act, right? And I think that conversation will continue, but even the Manchin bill was pretty marginal in terms of the reforms that it would do. So I don't know. I think that probably what needs to happen is there probably needs to be some marginal reform passed that it's probably not going to do much. We need to have a few years go by where not much gets done, and then we need to revisit it and say, oh, look, not much got done. We need to have more serious reform.
Gotcha. Eli, if I said, you need to fix NEPA, you've got a year. Let's say I give you a war chest of $10 million. Is there anything, is there anything and you had to give it your best shot? What would the approach be there?
I don't know. I think, so one of the things I'm thinking about more and more is, let's say there was someone in the White House who was really committed to this.
Yeah.
I think so NEPA is an act of Congress, right?
Right.
You don't unilaterally get to repeal acts of Congress if you are president, but there is a lot that the executive can do.
Gotcha.
Right? There's a lot, just executive action.
Yeah.
So, if were to be a new president in a couple of years, and they wanted to really, really like spend their political capital, on fixing, maximal permitting reform. They could do quite a lot without Congress, and I think that's kind of one thing I'm thinking a lot about is, I don't know when we'll have the opportunity. Right. If we had the opportunity, what would the playbook be?
Gotcha. That makes sense. I love it. And Eli, I'm really I'm glad you're admiring this problem. I think this is an incredibly important problem. I'm quite concerned about stagnation, and not enough people are working on it. But talking to people like you gives me hope that there's still a chance we can escape it, which I'm happy about. Eli, if the audience wants to think more deeply about these issues around NEPA, et cetera, and try and contribute and help them move the needle here, where should they go? What would you recommend?
My organization, the Center for Growth and Opportunities, looking very closely at this issue. So find us online at thecgo.org.
Awesome.
That's the main thing I would recommend.
I love that. Well, Eli, thanks again for hopping on. It was great to catch up. And again, I'm really excited you're working on this problem. I think it's one of the most important problems, and it's quite neglected as well, which is good.
Thanks, Will. Yeah, great to be with you.
Absolutely.